Hi, this is Lauren Bothwell, and this is my final oral exam for EPSY 7210, Multicultural Gifted and Talented Education. So first, I will talk about two goals or objectives from the syllabus and how I believe that I met them. The first is recognize prejudice and oppressive institutional structures in education that marginalize gifted students from racially and culturally diverse backgrounds, specifically race, class, gender, and language issues. The first realization that I've been able to come to through this class is the issue with admission to a multicultural gifted education program. Many programs, if not all, as we know, do use a standardized test to qualify students for admission into the gifted program. However, now I've been able to realize the issues with testing and the biases that lie within the testing. There's also the issue related to that of these tests being normed on a national level, which our racially and culturally diverse students may not fit in with. It might be a completely different population, but it seems like not many schools or districts choose to locally norm their testing instead, which would be much more beneficial to the racially and culturally diverse students. And the fact that we are relying mostly on this testing instead of a more multifaceted approach that involves a lot of different input, which gives a more comprehensive look at the student. There's also the prejudice and oppressive structures in that a lot of teachers are not learning how to best identify these gifted traits within our racially and culturally diverse gifted students. And especially being a white teacher, it's difficult for me to personally understand those other cultures without an intense education and training on how those cultures will present their giftedness differently. And without that training in teacher programs, we're continuing to not realize those different traits that we need to look for, which continues to underrepresent racially and culturally diverse students in the system, which in turn leads to less racially and culturally diverse people as teachers, which in turn just continues that cycle. I also was able to learn about, similar to that, personal biases that go generally unrealized or generally on a subconscious level due to systematic biases that we've grown up with and are not aware of. This is including a lot of things such as, the general concept of tending to identify more with people similar to yourself, which is an issue because systematically and institutionally, we do have a lot more white teachers, which is going to negatively affect the large racially and culturally diverse population that we have. So due to that institutional structure, these diverse students are being oppressed from having an equal opportunity to get into the gifted and talented programs. And I think this does stem from a very large societal-based system of biases, stereotypes, and stigmas. One that really stood out to me from the course was when we talked about things in everyday life that show white as being the dominant culture, such as nude colored things like makeup, band-aids, clothing. They're not nude for our racially and culturally diverse students. They are for or for racially and culturally diverse people in general, they are for white people. And just having that entire societal mindset, looking at the big picture, will trickle down probably even more intensely as you get to the institutional structures, such as the educational programs, the gifted that teachers go through to become teachers, the gifted and talented programs in the school, and nationally recognized tests, among other things. The second objective that I feel I've met is the ability to evaluate personal beliefs and professional experience related to multicultural gifted education issues. I have not had personal professional experience with this. However, I have been able to learn how to evaluate my personal beliefs. And honestly, this was the first time that I was able to develop personal beliefs related to multicultural education, because it's the first introduction I've had to it and the first time I was required to really reflect on it and learn about it. So I think, not that I have gone through evaluating all my personal beliefs, which I'll speak to later, but now I have the knowledge that will allow me to evaluate my beliefs in an educated and systematic way related to these issues. So continuing on that same vein, my areas of growth and how that will affect my future work. So as I said, I started with essentially no mindset towards multicultural education, but now I'm realizing the importance of it, not only to include our racially and culturally diverse students, but for all students, because I am going to be working, at least at first, in a private school which does not have as diverse of a population. But even for the non-diverse students, they will be growing up in a multicultural world, a multicultural society, and I believe that through a well-done multicultural education, these students can start to be a first generation to enact change against the larger multicultural issues that we have going on, as I spoke to before, on a societal and institutional level. So there is a huge importance of multicultural education, and of course the benefits for our racially and culturally diverse students through multicultural education are unlimited. What I believe would be most important is just having representations that they can relate to in their education, in books, in language arts class, in points of view in a history class, of people who made successful changes in the worlds of science and math. And just having someone for these students to relate to and who they can see themselves and their culture in, which they don't often have without a multicultural education. And I believe that once they do have someone to relate to, it will help in giving them role models, people to look up to, careers to aspire to that they might not have due to their upbringing or just the amounts of stereotypes and stigmas that are put on them. My future work coming out of this class is just going to be to continue to self-evaluate. I don't believe that I have become fully self-actualized, I apologize, in this field. I really do need to continue to take a look at myself, just because I have had such limited experience with racially and culturally diverse people in general. And now, as I've said a couple of times, this is the first introduction I've really had to it, the first time I've really become introspective on this topic. So I just need to continue to go through my own beliefs and biases, work out why I have them, and most importantly, make sure that while I'm working through this, none of my biases or beliefs negatively impact my students. Two organizations or individuals to network with. I will be working in a small private school, so we do not have a gifted and talented program. Of course, there are students that will be high achieving and would likely fit into a gifted and talented program were one available, but since it is of a higher rigor school, things like that, we don't have that program. So I will not have a gifted program coordinator or anything like that to connect with in my daily work. Now, of course, there are organizations on a larger level that I could connect with to promote effectiveness and awareness of multicultural education, but I really wanted to focus on something that I would actually be able to use in my life. I'm sure there are many, many national organizations. Of course, I could go into our public school system, but I wanted just to reflect on something that I could actually do and take with me into this upcoming school year. So I listed two groups of individuals, I guess, as my own students and the parents of my students. Our school is mostly white. However, we do have a decent amount of racially and culturally diverse students. So first and foremost, I want to get to know my students and I want to learn about their cultures firsthand from them. And then they are in middle school, so of course they will be starting to understand their own needs and things such as that, but they are still, very early on in their metacognitive education. And that is why I also included the parents of my students. I want to connect with parents of all of my students, but especially for my racially and culturally diverse students, I want to learn from the parents directly how I can best help their students and also how I can help the parents to stay involved in the students' education. And I first realized the importance of connecting with parents through I apologize, I don't have the name in front of me right now, but the Grantham model for parent advocacy. And in that article, it was mentioned how important it is to have parental involvement and how parents can offer new ideas as to how we can approach multicultural education and best serve our students. So I don't think any organization can tell me how to best assist my own students better than those students and their parents, their guardians, their families, whoever they're living with, who are involved in their education. So I would like to learn from my students, from their parents, about their cultures, and then that will help me going forward when I have new classes with similar cultures. And it will also help me with future students who have different cultures, as I will better know how to get to know their cultures. So for me, I still believe that I do have a lot of growth to do, but because of this course, I am aware of the growth that I need, and so now I can make active steps towards that growth and towards self-evaluation. So thank you for listening.